Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. It's been a while. Very happy to have the folks from Swanton Town today, the Select Board Chairman Joel Clark and the Swanton Town Administrator Brian Savage. Good to see you, folks.
Good to be here.
It's been a while. Just talking off here about summer. I should note we're taping this show on Thursday, September 12th, way into mid-September. Day after, of course, the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. Sure. Anything of note in Swanton yesterday to take note of that, or nothing in particular?
No, it was pretty low-key. I see the flags were lowered at half-mast.
Yeah.
But, it doesn't seem possible, 23 years.
Right, 23 years.
Quite an event.
Yeah.
And may we
Certainly
never
was.
forget.
That's right. Definitely.
Right. An issue I don't think we've talked about. I know it's gotten some attention. I don't think it's come up on this show, and we haven't done this show for quite a while. Vermont National Guard, Joel, they're interested in like a new headquarters not far from Exit 20. It's been a while since I've even seen a story on that, but we've never talked about that.
Yes, they've actually purchased a 40-acre
Really?
lot.
Wow.
And my understanding is that will combine the armories of St. Albans and Swanton into one location. So not actually the headquarters, but combining two of the armories, updated facility. It'll take a few years to get the full funding for the construction and so on. So we think about 5 years before
Before it's
any
actually up and
facility.
running?
Yes, and maybe a
Interesting.
hair longer than that. It's mostly federal money that will be part of that project.
Interesting. And this is not too far from Exit 20 of I-89? Is that sort of somewhere around Exit 20 obviously in Swanton?
Yeah,
Right.
basically just down the road from the new state guards, it's going up.
Oh, is that right?
area.
Right.
Yeah, so there's
Wow.
a fair amount of activity there, and
Huh.
we'd like to see a lot more.
Interesting. Is this good news? Seems like in past stories I've read, I was seeing some mixed reviews to this. How is that? Have you got a good reaction? Is this a good thing as you see it, or?
Well, as I see it, it's certainly a good thing.
Yeah.
There could be up to 200 people. We're hearing on a guard weekend. Certain number of full-time employees, not very many, but a lot of activity at the facility at different times. I think where you get a little bit of a disagreement among people is the fact that it doesn't bring in a lot of tax revenue to the town. And I think that's the biggest concern.
As in no tax revenue, or?
Correct. Yeah. So
Do you
that-
sometimes get payment in lieu of
Right.
tax money for something like that?
They definitely, there is a state pilot program.
Yeah.
We have not, we have very little state property presently in the town of Swanton, so they never really have bothered to apply for it. This has changed that. When things are completed, I have already discussed it with the listers, and they will go out and do what they need to do, and then we'll have to do what we need to do to get in line for state pilot money.
So hopefully you can get some bucks for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's easy to think of Mrs. Foy National Wildlife Refuge of about 6,500 acres or so, and you get some pilot money.
Well, very
few
little,
bucks.
really.
Very little.
But that's the federal pilot program, but they do
Okay.
get some, but not much.
Right.
But they've been a very good neighbor to it. I know they've,
Yeah.
one of my involvement with being on the fire department years ago, they gave us grants to buy wildland forestry firefighting equipment, which is very valuable, and it was very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going back to town meeting day, and I'm not sure we've talked even since then. Congratulations on your election back on town meeting day. That was a while ago. But boy, a very close vote, as I recall, a very close vote on the significantly increased budget for police coverage, Joel?
Yes.
Brian?
Yeah.
It did pass, and I think you got, 2 more hours a day from Swanton Village Police out of that? Is that?
We got basically up to a 10-hour shift, yes.
Instead of an 8-hour
increase.
shift.
And we also have worked with them to get some coverage in the morning. We are getting a lot of complaints about traffic around school buses and so on. So we have some extra shift, not a full shift, but a few hours a week that we get out of the police department. Yeah, close vote, fully support the police department, what they do. They're more than just traffic control.
Yeah.
We do hear from residents that they don't see them out very often, but their shift is in the evening, and a lot of people are inside in the evening, and we have 50-something miles of road, so, you know, you're not going to cover 50 miles of road every evening just doing traffic.
Is that right, 50 miles of road? Wow.
Yes.
And is that 7 days a week or
Yes,
7 days a
7
week?
days a week.
10 hours a day?
Right.
Yes.
But you're reasonably satisfied with how that's going, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have a good working relationship. Chief Sullivan and his department, they come brief us monthly. If we have concerns in an area that needs a little more attention, then we work with them to have that taken care of. And we're looking forward to a continued relationship with the police department.
Yeah, I guess Swanton Village has, of course, they didn't fare well, which I guess was I don't think any surprise to anybody. Their proposal for the new public safety facility, of course, went down. I'm sure Bill Sheets, Swanton Village manager, I interviewed a while back. Obviously, they're working on trying to come up with another plan on that, but they certainly didn't fare well with that proposal. And I guess that was no surprise. Just seemed like sticker shock or whatever, but they still have an issue with a pretty cramped police department.
Yeah, they have.
very
Brian,
much
something
so,
you've
yeah.
dealt with in the past,
Right.
obviously.
Very, very much so. It's extremely cramped. So they definitely need more space. And I really don't think that anyone, as a village resident, which I am,
Right.
I don't think anyone felt that they didn't need the extra space. It was just the sticker shock of the price.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. How did you think that vote? Did you think that vote was going to pass? Did you think that was going to be that close a vote?
Did not think it was going to pass. It's
that
certainly
right?
sticker shock, and the
Oh,
village.
I'm sorry. I'm back to the police budget issue. In
the
Swanton
police
Town.
budget?
I knew that public safety thing was going down.
Yes, as far as the budget, thought it was
Yeah.
going to be close, but there's still a lot of support, and people understand the need
Yeah,
for police coverage.
yeah.
So
I know one of the candidates, not in your race, but in another race, and of course I asked the question, do you support the increase in the police budget? And one of the candidates who wasn't successful said, no, it's too much money. And I said, and if that goes down, then what? Well, state police will be there. And I'm saying, boy, I'm not sure you should be holding your breath on much state police coverage. Had that gone down, I mean, it seems like you would have been in pretty tough shape, and but it didn't, so I guess nothing you had to worry about then. But I mean, state police seem like they're stretched incredibly thin.
they're stretched very thin, and we just have to work and convince the community that
Yeah.
this is the way to go. And again, the village police department has done a lot in trying to remove illegal activity from the area,
Yeah.
and they're doing a good job at it. And we've got to just keep letting the public know, and they need as well to just keep the public informed of the good things they're doing and why they are what we need.
Yeah. What are the biggest concerns you hear from just on the law enforcement front? I mean, speeding's always an issue, but sounds like drug issues are a big issue. But any particular issues? Just a lot of different things.
I would say speeding and drug
Speeding,
are the main issues.
Yeah.
One of the things the department itself is having a problem is getting extra bodies,
So
hiring
they're
people.
even- so no
It's
Bill
very
Sheets-
hard to hire new law enforcement officers. The
Wow.
state of affairs where people are arrested and they're back out on the streets within days, and multiple arrests. It's very frustrating for police officers, and it's getting harder and harder to recruit new police officers.
Sounds like Swanton Village PD was doing pretty well on that front, but maybe they're
They were,
having
but
some issues now.
Right.
They were, and
Yeah.
after the budget passed, they were going to bring on a new full-time police officer,
Yeah.
and that has
Didn't
not
happen.
happened yet.
Wow.
They're still working hard to bring another one on board.
Yeah, it seems like Bill Sheets has said on prior shows a number of times that Swanton Village PD was maybe the only fully staffed PD in the
Right,
state, and I
but,
guess they're even running into issues.
They are running into some of the issues. It's tough, and
sounds like it.
it certainly is not an easy job being a police officer.
Yeah.
And I think with the younger people just don't seem to want to go into that line of work,
Yeah.
and some of them are, and then they hit retirement age, and there's retirement. So yeah, it's a tough tough spot to be in. We obviously need them, but,
Yeah.
you know, for people to go into that line of work.
Yeah. The northern border getting a lot of attention. Boy, I forget the stat, but I couldn't believe the stats I saw from Border Patrol or whoever on their apprehensions have just gone way up. You notice any activity? You ever see folks wandering around Swanton who you think might, maybe shouldn't be there?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because we've received calls from media outside of the state
Really?
asking that.
In fact, Swanton, didn't the New York Post have a story
Right.
featuring Swanton and Alberg maybe
Right.
some months ago?
And of course, they always talk about the Swanton sector, so that's why they're
Right.
called. But that, of course, is
Right. Covers a lot
very
of ground.
large
Bunch of New York,
portion.
all of New Hampshire, all of Vermont. Yeah.
And so, given my office location,
Yeah.
I don't see it as, hardly any movement of anybody that may fit that profile.
Yeah.
So I refer them up to Bill Sheets, because they're closer to the interstate and whatnot, and they may see them.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed that many in the around in the village in the morning when I'm driving around.
Yeah.
But we seem to, as far as what the police have done, they've, as far as illegal substance abuse and whatnot, it's been pretty quiet. They've been very proactive in dealing with that. And I think, Chief Sullivan said it at our last meeting he was at, that the word is out. That's not the type of activity Swanton's going to condone. And it's still happening, of course, but not to the level that it was perhaps even a year ago.
Yeah.
So haven't noticed as many people wandering the streets. But they may be out there, but just kind of under the radar.
Joel, anything you're noticing on that front?
No, and hasn't really been brought to our attention
All right.
that it's an issue. As we said,
Yeah.
it's the Swanton sector, which covers a large
Right.
area, and I think if people are coming across, it's not happening where they're coming and walking down through Swanton. They're getting picked up right near the border and moving through the highways and stuff. So
Of course, the place that was getting a ton of attention was over in Champlain, Buck, whatever that road is and stuff, that I guess the Canadian folks have eventually kind of shut down, but that was the place that was getting a lot of attention. But we've heard so much about the southern border and still are hearing about it, but it sounds like the northern border getting more concerned and maybe even getting more personnel up there. But anyway, big issue when I last left this issue with you folks, the proposed new recreation and community center. And I'm going back maybe a good year or so. It looked like that was headed at some point for a bond vote. Then I started hearing that you folks ideally would like to deal with that issue if you could without going to voters. But it's been a long time. Give me an update on that. What's maybe something you could probably spend the rest of the show on, I suspect. But
Well, it's something I'm very passionate about. That's one of the reasons I get this shirt on today. The Recreation Department, the number of people that they touch from all age levels and the things that they do.
and they've had a good summer, busy summer.
Very busy summer. I go by there once or twice a month, and to see the number of kids, sometimes 60 or more, as part of summer camp, running around in that area and the laughing and the smiling and stuff. Again, they touch a lot of people. As you say, there was talk, and it was a very large facility. A pretty good size bond vote would have been required if we were going to seek funding that way.
Yeah.
And with what was going on in the village, the appetite wasn't there for that type of debt to be taken on.
Yeah.
So things have scaled back. There's a few things, really can't go into detail today, but looking at a facility of a smaller size, we have some, and I'm going to use the word ARPA funds, even though that has gone away, but there's still, we call them special funds now, that we have, where we could do some stuff to improve the existing facility, maybe some expansion, and not have to go to the taxpayers for additional dollars. So definitely something that I think you're going to hear about quite a bit more in the coming months.
So-
Again, there's something right now that can't go into detail, but we are definitely looking at making some improvements.
Interesting. So you may not be going for a new facility. You may just try to work with what you have and maybe expand that, or can't really get in.
That's one of the options.
It's an option.
A new, much smaller facility without the indoor basketball court is a possibility located in that area. There's a couple ways we can do it, but we haven't figured that out totally yet. But again, I think in the next few months, we will be hearing more and coming up with a plan.
Interesting. Didn't you designate some ARPA money for that purpose?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, it's 60,000 or did I dream it?
600,000.
Sorry, I'm
600,000.
way off. 600,000.
Yes.
That's right. And that money, is that money that has to be spent? Is there a deadline to spend that money?
Well, that's why we refer to it now as special funds. There was a
Okay.
deadline. And in dealing with that was Congress changed the rules. Well, not really so much the rules on it, but it allowed municipalities to, basically create a surplus. That's why we're called special funds. So they are technically no longer ARPA funds, and we still have them, and how we have to account for them is differently. But it is all perfectly on the up and up and legal, and every municipality had to do that. Congress realized that many towns, the smaller the towns especially, cannot, they talk about shovel-ready projects. My opinion
pretty
in
tough.
Vermont is there's really no such thing as shovel-ready. It takes a great amount of, to build a new facility, as like the rec center would be a major undertaking with a lot of pre-construction work before even any shovel hits the ground.
Yeah.
So Congress realized that these many towns just wouldn't be able to spend that amount of money that fast. So they implemented new rules, and so that's where we are. So the deadline kind of went away, but we still have to account for it differently. So we'll have to explain all this at town meeting, because it gets really complicated.
Sounds like So you would hope, Joel, maybe next year there might be some actual movement on this? Is
Hoping some movement in the next month or two.
In the next month or two?
Some things are happening, and yes.
Okay, but definitely the bond vote that was talked about for a while, or potential bond vote, that's gone. You're not looking to go that route?
I don't think the select board is interested enough to get a majority vote on that.
Yeah.
So I don't see that going forward at this time. Something smaller that the community, I think, can get behind, that it really does not involve any increase to their taxes.
Yeah. Do you get, so it sounds like the rec programs do very well. Do you get some kids outside of Swanton? Do you get some Alberg Highgate kids, or is it mostly just Swanton kids in the Swanton rec programs?
And that's a great question that I do not know the answer
Sure,
to.
obviously mostly Swanton kid, just
Right,
curious.
mostly Swanton, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe there may be some from the other communities,
Yeah.
but
I'm sure mostly Swanton.
but mostly would be Swanton. But
Yeah.
that's a good question, though. We
Yeah.
find out.
There's some library issues. Is there some work needed to be done at the library? And is that a village or town issue?
That's a town issue.
That is a town
The
issue.
town owns the building.
Okay.
We've had icing problems on the roof of
Right.
that building ever since the addition was put on, basically, and we're looking to address those, and we've using the special funds again set aside, formerly known as ARPA. We've had an architect, Les Gangus, come up with a solution, and so we're going to be implementing that probably next spring. We have to watch what the weather will be, because we actually have to have the ductwork for the HVAC system disconnected and removed so they can get in there and work. So we obviously can't use it to heat the building, and we have to make sure that it is not too hot to provide cooling. So it has to be in that time frame. So that's going to be happening later next spring.
Was there also an issue about, I forget the groups, but there was some concern about a group using one of the rooms?
Oh, yeah, that was...
That's been going on forever.
that was going on, but that's been resolved.
That's been
and it's
resolved.
Still there, and yes, yep.
Library doing okay? Pretty busy place? Or?
Yes, it's very busy. Again, they have a lot of programs during the summer and school vacations for the kids, and it's usually hopping over there with a lot of activity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're doing well.
They partner well with the rec department,
Yes.
and they work together very closely on activities and stuff, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah. How's the town doing staffing-wise? When positions come up, sounds like everybody, labor shortage for just about everybody out there. Has the town run into that at all?
Well, we, back a few months ago, our assistant town clerk, Tanya Dufresne, who worked for a lot of years.
Tanya was great, always treated me very well.
She decided to resign, and it was time for a change in her career path. So we had an opening there, which has been filled. And that's an appointment by the town clerk. And our new assistant town clerk is Tamar Bouchard, who lives on the St. Albans Road, and she's fitting in very well. She started in late May. We've had no other openings as far as employees are concerned. Everything is pretty much status quo as it has been for the last year and a half, 2 years. We do have an opening on the select board. Cody Hemingway resigned his seat due to personal and family matters taking up a lot of time. So we have an opening there, and we have posted that out, looking for people, if they're interested, to submit a letter of interest to the select board, a letter of interest and a brief resume, and they can mail that or email it to me at the town offices, and we will looking for a deadline of September 26th, which is, and then the board will review and hopefully take action the first meeting in October for an appointment until town meeting. That is to fill the unexpired term.
How many years would be left on Cody's term come town meeting?
It will expire.
Oh, that's when it expires.
Yeah,
Okay.
in March. So.
Boy, the board's had a fair amount a lot of turnover in recent years, it seems like.
Yes, it has. We encourage people to get their letter in. The more, the better, as far as giving us an opportunity to pick from.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to spend a few months and see if it's something you're really interested in, and
Yeah, the
then
timing
you put
does
your
sound
name
good.
in, in the January timeframe. For the March elections. The one thing that we didn't mention is the health officer vacancy.
I was just going to mention that.
We've had a health officer vacancy for a number of months now, and by state statute, I am the health officer until we find one. So Brian has actually been doing the lion's share of work, taking on issues when we get calls. But
And is there much work? Issues do come up with that?
Issues do come up.
Interesting.
About 2 or 3 issues per month.
Really?
And it comes like anything. It comes sometimes busier than others, but
What's a typical, maybe there's no typical issue, what are some of the things that would come up with that?
complaints of a lot of garbage being left around the outside of a property or of an apartment, and that's typically the biggest one. We've got some things are we look into them and have to determine whether there is a problem or not, and corrective action to be taken. And a lot of most of these will involve rental property. So that's and sometimes it's not really a health officer problem. It goes more under the rental housing code, which is, and I will have to refer the people to the Division of Fire Safety because they do the enforcement of that code. So, yeah, it's But you never know, that's this, but it does require some time, and so anybody interested, that posting is on our website still, and they have to do an application. Now,
Is that a paid position? Is there
yes,
some bucks?
it is.
Yeah.
It is paid. I think we were presently paying $350 per month.
Oh,
Now,
interesting.
it is. It's actually a state. They're appointed by the Commissioner of Health of the state of Vermont
Yeah, really.
upon the recommendation of the Select Board.
Interesting.
But they're on the payroll of the town. But that's how that works.
So, Jill, you just as soon have someone else in that role, or Brian effectively, huh?
Yes, we think there are other things that Brian can be doing, and back to your question about how often, I would say probably 3 is an average
Yeah, that would be
per
an
month,
average.
3
3
calls,
months.
or
So stuff,
maybe a little
stuff
less.
does come up.
Yeah, so not
Interesting.
too much involved with it, but because there isn't very much involved, it's hard to find people who
Right.
want to take that on. But
Right. Jill, this is your second stint on the select board, or am I off by 1 or 2? I mean, 2 different times having served on the select board, or am I off on that?
2012 to 2020 was my first.
First.
I did 8 years on the select board at that time.
Now you're on your second stint.
Yes.
Do things get more what are your thoughts on being back on the select board for kind of a second time? Things get ever more complicated, or is it not that much different than your earlier long tenure?
Yes, I don't think it's much more complicated. People are different. COVID has changed things a little bit. But overall, it's a lot of the same issues. What the town is responsible for really hasn't changed. Things like working with the village, and the village, has had some turnover, not much, but just trying to keep a good relationship there. Working for what we call One Swanton, and trying not to be divisive at all, I think is very important. And that's always been an issue that I want to make sure we focus on that. So no, not any real big changes. Some changes in my life allowed me to get back into doing this, and decided to step up and take it on.
Yeah, the One Swanton, does that kind of go back to when Vermont Council on Rural Development was in town, the Swanton Enhancement Project? Is that kind of hooked into that, or not really?
Well, the enhancement project has done a lot of work, and it's really paid. It's really had some positive impact, certainly on the community.
And
So
still
it
is
does
having
sort of go back to that.
some impact. That
Oh, very much so.
still
It's,
task forces who are doing some
task
work.
force, the beautification committee. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've driven through the village, but the flowers, the planning, even the town office looks absolutely beautiful with the work that they did with that, with the flower planting, so it all I think ties in together, and I think it's certain projects like the redevelopment of the old Prouty Market building and the municipal auditorium that Gordon Winters has undertaken.
And we have a restaurant. We have a new restaurant in
We have
town.
a restaurant.
How's Swanton do? I haven't been there. How are those folks doing? Do you know?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I've been several times, and anybody that's listening to this or sees this, I would encourage them, if they plan on going, to make a reservation. 'Cause
Really?
They're full all the time.
Wow.
It's the food is very good, prices are reasonable, and the atmosphere is great. Gordon and Deborah has done a tremendous job with that building, and so it's certainly, and I've noticed with a few times that, I've been more than a few times that I've been there. There's people there that are definitely from out of town that are coming. So that's great. They're doing a good job.
Well, talk about something that folks were talking about for years. Can Swanton please get another restaurant? It sounds like that's been a really good plus.
Right.
Absolutely. Anybody you talk to who's been there is very positive on the experience. The Green Mountain Bistro.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong
Green
What did I
Mountain
say?
Bistro.
Green Mountain Bistro. Thank you.
Located at the old theater building, and
Right.
the actual sign of the theater is up and
Yeah,
shining
no,
there.
I've been by it. No, it looks right.
Yeah,
I
it's-
did catch the car show, another great car show at the
It was.
end of July.
It was
Yeah.
very well attended,
Yeah.
and it's been our summer weather has been difficult to plan outside events, but
Yeah.
they pull it off, and it's always the same. It's the same weekend as the old Swanton Summer Festival.
That's funny. I was just about to say, does anybody ever ask you about bringing back the Swanton Summer Festival?
They have asked me. And,
Don't hold your breath, I suspect, huh?
Well, I actually wrote like an 11-page paper on it for one group.
Really?
And kind of went back with the history of how it all started.
When did it start?
I think it was 1958.
Boy, 50,
1959,
decades
something like
before
that.
even my time up here.
And how it went from like a 2-day event in the square, and then they moved everything down to a field in the lake or
Oh, really?
someplace for like a field day, and how it just kind of went and moved.
Huh.
And where it ended, I mean, and I said, you cannot start it off to resurrect it. You can't start it where it ended, because it would be too much of an undertaking, and the number of volunteers needed. Now, everybody's having a problem with volunteers.
Yeah.
And at one point in one of the festivals, because I was involved with it for a lot of years,
When was the last year, roughly anyway?
I want to say 2000, maybe around 2006.
So almost 20 years ago. Yeah.
And I could be way off on that,
Yeah.
but time goes by so quick. But the whole thing was with volunteers. It was all done by volunteers. And in one year that we did it, and it was I think it was one of the anniversary years of the festival, we had 350 volunteer
Wow, is
positions.
that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was the biggest business in town for those few days that it ran. It
Sure.
was tremendous.
Yeah.
But we had many people. I just had one yesterday that would vacation in Swanton for years, but their family grew up and they moved on their way. They were on the phone with me yesterday, and they're coming back to visit Swanton, and they asked about different people, and they mentioned the festival, and they were so sorry to hear that it wasn't, because that was where they took their kids every year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That, of course, makes me think of Franklin County Field Days.
Yeah.
Boy, it sure seems like we may have seen our last field days for a while. I
Yeah,
guess there was I was
unfortunately.
hearing some hope that the field days folks were hoping to maybe buy the land, but it seems like I've read stories that state's
Yeah.
not about to sell that land. Have you got any feel for that, Joel?
Well, the only feel is that, as you say, they're probably going to have to move out of there, and I think the state has other plans that hasn't been totally shared yet. But they're not going to. We sent a letter of support to keep in the field days and for them to be able to purchase it. But I don't even think we've had a response back
No.
yet from,
Is that right?
from the
Not
state
received a
regarding it.
response.
Yeah, it sounded pretty hopeless from what I was hearing. I guess the
yeah.
state gave an extension this year, maybe even last year too, but
Yeah.
it sounds like this might. I know they've been looking for another site. I know they checked out sites in Highgate and Franklin, but I'm not aware they've got close to anything, and just the money involved. Just think of all the buildings here and stuff. Jeez.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's a annual event that a lot of people
Yeah.
get involved in, and
Yeah.
it's part of our history, and
Yeah.
we'd certainly like to see it continue, but probably not.
Yeah, I've been up here long, and I'm going back to probably, I blew into town in November '75, but I remember there had been a field days, and that had faded out, and Doug Webb, the great Doug Webb of Fairfax, dairy farmer,
Right.
huge promoter of dairy in Maple, and his wife Nellie. I think Doug was the key guy, and they actually brought it back to life at the Northwestern Riding
Right,
and
I
Driving
went up
Club
there,
in Fairfax for a year or two, and then
Yeah.
No, that's tough. Boy, it sounds like the future at the moment sounds a bit bleak for the field days, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it certainly does, and it certainly came a long way. I went up to the field days when it was up at the Northwest
No, is that right?
Driving Club with
Yeah.
my father, because he was still working in the grain business.
Really?
So he would go up.
Interesting.
And I went with him one time, and it certainly came a long ways. It's unfortunate because we like to promote agriculture, obviously,
Sure.
and this is an agricultural event.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that they would lose it. So I'm not sure, but we haven't heard anything from the state. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Speaking of the airport, I mean, potential big doings out there. I guess the extension of the water and sewer lines is
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
coming up.
coming up, and I guess what?
They had groundbreaking. Oh, is it?
No, did they have a?
Well, I'm not sure if they've had it or it's coming up.
Huh.
But,
It sounds like that's getting close.
right.
That
Water,
sounds like
sewer, and actual extension of the runway, right? I mean, there's a lot of
I guess
construction
what
going on there right now.
they widened it. Did they extend it also? I know they've
Well,
already
they did
done work up
extend
there.
it
They did
to
extend it to.
4,001 feet, I believe, was the,
Is that right?
yeah, the 1 foot. That was always that was back from my transportation days
No,
on the House
really?
Transportation Committee, but there was a
Interesting.
reason why it had to be 1 foot.
Huh.
And I'm not sure about widening it, but but they did encounter some problems with a certain bird in that area.
Oh, is that right?
I don't know. They've worked around that, but
Huh.
so there's a lot of activity up there.
So and what do you think of that? It sounds like in the future it could be, some industry moving in, jobs moving in, but it sounds like there's some pretty good potential out there for the future.
There's definitely potential. I mean,
Yeah.
if whatever their plans are. Again, going back to a few years when I was sitting on the House Transportation Committee, and
Yeah.
they mentioned all this project and putting water and sewer lines in and et cetera. And I said, because they were looking for perhaps industrial development up there,
Yeah.
which is fine.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if that takes off, because they're all transportation there, I said, you've got to do something. There has to be something done with exit 21, the interchange between
Yeah.
exit 21 and Route 78 there.
Yeah.
Got to do that. And they
Oh, that's the
have
point.
started preliminary work on some improvements there, but we haven't had any further meetings, but are looking at it. That's
Interesting.
the off-ramp, the northbound off-ramp. I don't know if you've ever been caught in it, but it backs way up.
Yeah, I've been backed up there a few times.
Yeah.
So it backs way up onto the inner. Yeah, I
got caught in
bet it does. Is that right?
My last trip back from Burlington on a doctor's appointment.
No,
I
really.
hit
Yeah,
the
it can back
timing
up.
was
It can
wrong.
back up a ways.
It backs up, and it also
Really?
backs up to where there's a bridge, so there's
Yeah.
no
No
shoulder
escape, no
to
shoulder.
Wow.
to line the
Yeah.
cars up. So
Wow.
all of a sudden they're in the travel lane, and it's also coming up over a little
Yeah.
bit of a rise
Yeah.
there. So
It's
it's
very
a
dangerous.
dangerous situation.
Yeah, of course, that brings to mind exit 17, Champlain Island, same
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
issue, and they have done some
Yeah.
new work down there.
Yeah, big project going.
No,
in.
that sounds like a real issue.
And so certainly, they were aware of it then. I said, and if you have major industrial activity going on
Yeah.
there, it's really going to be an
Yeah.
issue. So
Interesting.
they didn't disagree. So.
Yeah, Ben. So back to One Swanton, are there initiatives, are there kind of meetings on how active is the One Swanton thing?
No, that's mainly a phrase, not
Yeah, just a phrase.
Yes, just a phrase of trying to make everybody understand that there's a town, there's a village, but we're one Swanton, and working
Yeah.
together is the way we're going to get the most done.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like you do pretty well. You still meet once in a while with trustees. Are there occasional meetings with village trustees?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There'll be one coming up with some changes to the zoning regulations, so we will have them come to the meeting. Town is the approval authority, but it's important to have their input as well
Yeah.
on those changes, and we meet as needed, and a lot of informal meetings. You meet with Bill frequently.
As a matter of fact,
Certainly.
this afternoon at
Yeah.
1:30,
All right.
I'm meeting with Bill and a couple of his people to discuss a number of issues, and that we have discussed informally for a while, and then I'll probably report certainly Tuesday night to the board to see, because one does involve the planning commission, and so but we're working, we sit down and we don't necessarily always agree,
Sure.
but that's part of the process, that's
Yeah.
all.
No, always good. Always enjoy sitting down with Bill Sheets and the village people. If you think of it, tell them always happy to see those folks in here.
As a matter of fact, a great example was the bridge closure.
Sounds like that went about as well as you could have hoped to go.
It went very well, and it was the village project, but it was
Yeah.
town roads, and they
Yeah.
listened to our concerns, and they made changes that we asked for,
Yeah.
and called us up when different things were happening.
So it kept you well informed about
yeah,
that.
very much so, and
That's
really
right.
appreciate
I guess
that.
got it done a few days ahead of
early,
time.
which was good,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, it sounds like that went about as well as it could have gone.
There was just one motor vehicle crash on the
All right.
detour route, and that was
Yeah.
a rear end. There was somebody not paying attention, which
Yeah.
could happen even during normal traffic.
But nothing real serious.
Nothing serious.
Yeah.
no.
Boy, speaking of airports, this caught, I'm sure most folks saw the news story on this, but the small plane crash at Basin Harbor. But
Yeah.
the puzzling thing about nobody heard of this was in daylight with a state park. That's what struck me as the odd. I mean, a real sad story. All 4 people on the plane, including a teenager, died, but that nobody saw or heard this happen in the afternoon. That just kind of blew my mind a little bit. But anyway.
Yeah.
And I know I haven't been down to Basin Harbor for a while, but nice airstrip down there. But yeah, tough story. But that just seems so weird to me that, they didn't, I guess, even, look into this
Right.
until they got the report from the Connecticut people saying, hey, the people never came back or something.
Very.
Just kind of strange.
It is strange when you think about it. What day did that occur?
Boy, was it last weekend?
Yeah,
Just within the
last
last
weekend.
week,
I
and
wonder
there's
if
a
it was
state
just
and there's a
very
state
recent.
park. What Button Bay State
Right,
Park
Button
is
Bay
very
is right
close to
there.
that. Seemed very strange.
I was wondering if it was Sunday. Sunday was really a fall day, and maybe some people were just inside
Yeah,
with the windows and
yeah, I
doors
think it might have
shut and
been.
just
Was
didn't hear
it
it.
Saturday or Sunday?
But very strange.
Yeah.
But, I went to Basin Harbor and flew in on a helicopter.
No, did you really?
My
Wow.
first helicopter ride. Back
Boy, I've
when,
never been on a helicopter.
back when I was in the
Really?
legislator, because that was back when I was on the military, General Housing Military Affairs Committee.
Huh.
And we were to go visit the summer camp for the National Guard,
Huh.
but they had just come back from a deployment, and so it was held at the Underhill Range. So they picked us up at the Burlington Airport in a helicopter, took us for a ride,
Wow.
and then we rendezvoused with the others coming in from another part of the state. The only ones that couldn't make it were those from Rutland. They had to drive up because of fog. They couldn't get a chopper up in the air because it was too foggy.
Yeah.
My first time in a helicopter, it was as smooth as an airplane. I was surprised.
That's right. Have you been in one since?
No.
I've never been in one.
But,
Jill, you've logged some time in helicopters?
Oh, yeah, been in several
Plenty of time.
helicopters. And another one was the National Guard, and it was great. We left Burlington and went over to Fort Drum. So
Oh,
going over
really?
the Adirondacks and stuff for the
How
doors
long
wide
a
open.
trip was that?
Maybe a half hour
No,
or so.
that's all?
And they got the door wide open and seeing the scenery and stuff.
Wow.
And we went over to, actually, we took other legislators over and showed them what the Army Guard was doing for training over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was a great experience.
Interesting.
I enjoyed that day, these field trips, but I was really looking to go to Fort Drum. But it was, they wanted to keep the troops close to home, and that's
Interesting.
understandable. But it was interesting. It was the 2011 when we had the high water in the spring flooding.
Yeah, they
So-
give you a record lake level of about 103.27 or so.
And,
I remember it
seeing
well.
Oh, yes.
Seeing it from the air,
Wow.
was really
Wow.
something. So,
Yeah, Jennifer still had her in Tabor House Inn and stuff, and lost some business from folks just hearing about flooding in Vermont.
Right.
And even the train tracks, I remember that, were
Yeah.
just about lost Route 78,
Right.
that
Yeah.
really
Yeah, it
close
did.
call out
Yeah.
there.
I had a couple hundred sandbags in front of my property.
Is that right?
Oh,
Boy,
yeah,
I
it
guess you can remember that pretty
was-
well.
Oh, yes, very much so.
I had your neighbor calling me in Montpelier wondering where they could get sandbags. So
Yes.
I directed her to Reggie because he was the emergency management director.
Yep.
That's when I first got to know Reg, in fact,
Yeah.
Belleville.
Yeah.
Where sandbags makes me think of a hurricane, I guess now tropical storm or depression Francine, just saying the poor folks in New Orleans and down that way doing a lot of sandbagging. Geez, I trust New Orleans. I hope those folks survived. I was paying some attention to that yesterday, but looks like the one break we're going to get from the last two hurricanes, the remnants have caused so much flooding in parts of Vermont. It sounds like this one was just going to fade out around St. Louis or something. Haven't heard any of the weather folks saying we have any concern about the remnants of Francine.
I was very surprised when you look at the long-range forecast.
Boy,
There's no impact as far as...
That sounds good. Speaking of the legislature, just the affordability issue just seems to be a bigger and bigger issue with the legislature having wrapped up their last session and getting what property tax increase down to about, 14-15% typically. But it just sounds like that issue is just a huge issue. I mean, you run into, I wake up to the WVMT folks every day, and I can just about count on a listener or two calling up and saying, hey, I'm out of here. Give me another year or two, and I'm out of here. I just can't afford this place. Maybe you've always heard that, but do you hear that more these days?
It's a big issue.
It sure seems like
we're
it.
hearing more for Swanton. For a resident, 11.5% increase, of which 9.5 was the educational
Right.
piece. But I don't know if you caught the news last night.
Probably
the
not.
governor's already speaking about if
I did
if they hold the
that.
budgets level.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a 7% increase to the education,
Wow.
and so he's already putting the warnings out.
I did hear the
People can't-
governor talking about that.
Yeah, then, the people cannot absorb that type of increase
Well,
year after year.
I suspect that may go back a bit to your talking about the rec and community center, why you moved away from a bond issue that was getting some attention, and just how much more can people take?
Yeah, and we as a select board are going to have to look very hard at our budget for
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
Even though we're 28% of, like my tax bill, 28% is for the municipality.
Yeah, typically about a
72%,
quarter or so.
right, is the education bill, but we've got to do our part this year to really minimize any increase in the tax bill. It's important. People on fixed incomes cannot absorb this increase. Inflation number, that's double. It's double, triple of what the inflation number is right now.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a huge issue. Speaking of that, I would certainly talk to Earl Fournier, I guess, vice chairman of the board. Earl's still vice chair, but we talk about the LOT, local option tax. Speaking of taxes, is that getting, of course, as we're talking taxes, but is that getting some attention?
Well, that's what my meeting with Bill is about
Oh, is
this
that right?
afternoon.
Interesting.
So there's, we do know at this point that it'll involve two votes, one for the village and one for the town.
So I'm sorry, two votes you said?
Well, the village
Yeah.
will have their option tax. In the town, if we adopt it, would have it. So
Okay,
the
so
village will
some-
have one, and the town will
Oh,
have
so
one.
they'd be separate.
Separate, and it gets
And
a
the
little
village could have one in the town.
right, or vice versa.
Okay, I
which
guess
would
I thought it was
even
hooked in together.
complicate it worse.
Okay.
Yeah, so that does. It's doable.
Yeah.
But it will. It's not as easy as just saying one for the town and the
Oh,
village.
interesting.
So,
Have you got any rough figures on how much revenue that would raise, Brian? Have you?
well, these are now over a year old, but
Yeah.
just on the retail, bricks and mortar retail,
Yeah.
we didn't have any of the mail order, which is a huge piece. But for town and village, that was the whole town together.
Yeah.
We estimated about $363,000 a year. But that is rough, and it does not include
Sure.
the mail order on it. So we had discussions with the tax department when we get to the town village, and I said, well, on the geocoding, how fine-tuned is that? Because it's if you're going just by the addresses, it'll be very difficult. They said, oh, no, it won't be a problem. But I think So we'll have to, continue to work it out, but it's still, yes.
And this would typically be, I guess it can be even on rooms and meals, but typically it's 1 extra cent on the sales tax is what I guess.
Sales tax and.
But it can be the other.
It can be rooms and meals.
Interesting.
Yeah, if the voters so approve it.
And of course, some people, hey, why are you hitting us with another tax? I guess the beauty of it is X number of people from out of town would be helping to pay for this. Joel, what are your thoughts? Does this sound like a good idea to you, or?
I don't think we have enough details yet for me to say yes, it's good, or no, it's not. I think one interesting thing, like let's say Swanton Lumber, my understanding is if they are delivering a product outside of the town, that we don't collect tax on it.
That's correct.
No, really?
So you take a lot of their business is delivering materials outside of the town of Swanton.
So that's
how
not,
much we
you're
actually
getting
get from
nothing out of
them.
that?
So that's an interesting piece of it, and how that fits in with the 360, and if that's the village and the town of which the majority of shops are inside the
Sure.
the village, how much would we really see, and is it worth it at that point to put that burden on? So someone from outside of the town, again, getting some of the product, if they state that it's going to their place, and we don't get their dollar. So that's an interesting piece of it I didn't realize, but when we started looking into it.
Interesting, yeah.
So basically, if I went down with a pickup truck and loaded up some material at Swanton Lumber, just using them for an instance, and and I was from out of town, I'm picking it up there.
Yeah.
I have to pay it. But if they took it and delivered it to my house, and I say I lived in Highgate,
interesting.
I wouldn't have to pay it. So, And I found that out by accident because of a situation I was all in, nothing to do with the town, but I was involved with ordering a large purchase of plate glass windows, and got it from a St. Albans business. But so I figured the 7%, because I know the town of St. Albans has, but we didn't get, because they delivered them to Swanton. So we didn't get.
You didn't get that extra.
We didn't get it. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Summer projects, I'm sure there was some repaving. I'm not sure if I noticed much, but you had some summer projects that went on for resurfacing, repaving.
Paving, we did about $450,000 worth of paving, so mostly just top coating roads, but significant improvement there. The good news is when you take a look at the number of miles of roads we have and the amount of paving we can do per year, we're pretty much staying ahead of it. Our roads are in really good shape. We got some longer-term projects regarding roads. One is up on Swanton Hill. We have a very steep section of the road up there,
that's come
very
up on the show
unsafe,
before.
and several times snowplows have gone off up there. And we got a plan we're moving ahead with and getting a design done, and we expect that next spring we will start blasting up there and lowering the road. There was some talk of relocating the road, but we're going to work with the existing road and lower it.
That's come up before, but it sounds like a very tough section up there, huh?
It is between the curve and just to find it. I mean, unless you really look for it.
I'm trying to think if I've even been there before.
And it only serves 3 residences.
Is that right?
I mean, there's some farm property up there and things.
Just very much in the corner, southeast corner, if I got my directions right? Swanton.
Near Fairfield. Yeah.
So that's one of the projects we're looking at and moving ahead on. One thing that's very disappointing project is the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail parking area.
In fact, I was just writing LVRT as you spoke.
Yeah, we 100% design, and we went out for bids late July, and due to all the flooding and the contractors that have to be approved on a list approved by the state.
Yeah.
Most of those contractors, between the fact that it's construction season and the extra work because of all the damage from the floods,
nobody even.
We had no bids.
Is that right? No bids?
So we will go out in January, probably time frame, and then we expect to have much more, a much better bidding climate as people are gearing up for the next construction
But is that
season.
right? No bids?
No bids. And
No.
yeah,
And
a
this is
couple
gonna-
contractors that I talked to, they were doing other work for the state, and they're just like, we're
Yeah.
too busy right now.
And this is what, a kiosk and a pavilion, stuff like that?
It's a paved parking area for
Paved
about
parking.
20 vehicles, less if it's got a trailer and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a picnic pavilion, a nice kiosk, and there'll be some water there, and bike stands, bike repair station, just a place for people to park their car.
A portable toilet at least? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
there was some talk of something more than that, but there are concerns with the people,
I'm sure.
actually staying in those type of
I'm sure-
facilities. And
sure
it's
that's a
something we
concern.
decided
Yeah.
we didn't want to deal with, and
Yeah.
that could be a future thing if we so desire. The good
Yeah.
news is that location is very close to the village offices,
Yeah.
so the town officer in the evening or the village, as they're driving around, they can easily swing in there. and
Village
just-
PD obviously being close.
Yeah, can drive right in there and take a look and
Yeah.
keep an eye on things. I know there was some concern by the residents, but overall, everything should be fine. And
Yeah.
we're looking forward to the project just to make it better
Sure.
for people who want to, start at one end and get to the
Yeah.
other, have a nice place to do it. It
Yeah.
doesn't take very long to get out of Swanton and in through Highgate, and I walked that area not too long ago, and just very, very nice in there.
Yeah, you can intersect Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail.
Right.
Boy,
Yeah.
poor LVRT, again, taking another hit.
Oh,
Another hit.
What, Danville, St. J area from the flooding again. Unbelievable.
Saw some pictures of a 70-foot gouge in
Yeah,
one
I've seen-
culvert
I
that
think I
got
saw 'em
plugged and
too.
got washed.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Are you noticing some more bike traffic around town with the LVRT? Is that noticeable at all, Brian, or not particularly?
Yeah, I've noticed that there's been quite a bit. There was, I noticed it when taking the detour route, because they also had the detour, so but, there was some. I've gotten phone calls and emails from people, planning a trip and using the LVRT.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely got a lot of interest. And then when I've been up that way, either for a variety of issues once in a while, lo and behold, there come some people down on their bikes or they're walking.
Yeah.
So it's definitely got.
No, it's a great resource.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully the weather, maybe the governor, of course, the governor was going to make it up
Right.
with Senator Sanders last year, and that never got
That never got,
rescheduled,
so-
and they got more flooding, so.
Yeah, so hopefully they'll make it up when we have it completed.
Well, and we want to get them up there for the
Opening.
yeah.
Yeah.
For
Hopefully that'll
shovels, so
happen.
For
Yeah.
shovels, so get things going.
Down to about 2.5 minutes. Any issues, anything you want to talk about? Or Brian, I'm sure there are other issues out there. Anything you want to mention in particular that we haven't touched on?
Well, this is kind of back to the tax issue.
Yeah.
As you know, the tax bills for the town of Swanton and the village as well went out, and they're due October 15th.
Is that just one time, not quarterly? Is that
That's right,
just
one time. They
one
can
bill?
pay, they can make monthly payments
Yeah.
if they wish, but
Yeah.
it's just not scheduled that way.
Yeah.
But the important thing is we've received is that when anybody, they have to declare their homestead exemption every year at
Right.
income tax time. Even if they don't do income taxes, they have to do that declaration. If they don't, they're assessed the higher non-residential rate on the education. It would also, they would not be able to get their prebate. So that's very important. It can be done late, but it's there's a penalty of like 3% assessed to that, but it can cause a lot of heartburn if it's not done. So I just encourage everybody to please make sure that when they're doing their taxes, or even if they don't do their taxes, if they have a family member who's strictly on Social Security and does not have the need of filing income taxes,
Yeah.
please see that they file those forms, and it's very important.
And deadline to pay October 15?
October 15th.
Okay.
Postmarks are not accepted I mean, as this
And it has to be in hand.
It has to be in hand in the office, so
Sure,
if they're
so-
planning on mailing it, give plenty of time. But October 15th, and the town offices are open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yeah. So that's coming up. Well, I guess that's going to just about do it. Again, appreciate the time. Sounds like a lot going on in Swanton. You got a lot of work to do, but good luck with everything.
Thank
So
you.
thanks to Joel Clark, the Swanton Select Board Chairman, Brian Savage, the Swanton Town Administrator, and thanks especially to my key guy out there, a guy who does all the hard work around here, Alan Cunningham, our producer. And we appreciate you watching us here on Northwest Access TV. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.